The teaching of Jiddu Krishnamurti that the observer is the observed is often presented as a profound psychological insight, one that supposedly dissolves inner conflict and brings about a natural state of peace. It sounds radical and elegant. It promises a kind of immediate transformation without effort, without discipline, without method. But when examined in the context of actual human experience, especially the raw, physiological reality of anxiety, fear, and emotional disturbance, it begins to look less like a transformative insight and more like intellectual garbage. The central problem is simple. The idea does not reliably do anything. People can understand it, repeat it, even feel momentarily convinced by it, and yet their inner state remains unchanged. Anxiety still arises, anger still flares up, the body still tightens under stress. If an idea claims to end inner conflict but leaves the nervous system untouched, then its practical value is highly questionable. At best, it becomes a decorative thought. At worst, a form of self-deception. The defenders of this teaching will argue that it is not meant to be an idea, but a direct perception. They say that merely thinking the observer is the observed is not the point. One must actually see it in real time. But this defense collapses under scrutiny. The very attempt to see that the observer is the observed is itself carried out by the observer. It becomes a subtle loop in which thought tries to convince itself that it has transcended itself. What results is not clarity, but a more refined confusion, one that is harder to detect because it wears the mask of insight. More importantly, this entire framework ignores a basic fact. Psychological disturbance is not just conceptual, it is physiological. Fear is not merely a thought, it is a surge of activation in the body. Anxiety is not resolved by clever perception. It is lived as a racing heart, shallow breath, and heightened alertness. Any claim of transformation that does not engage with this level of reality is incomplete at best and misleading at worst. If the observer is the observed does not calm, regulate, or at least meaningfully alter this embodied experience, then it fails a very basic test of relevance. In practice, the idea tends to work only under ideal conditions, quiet environments, minimal stimulation, absence of interpersonal friction. In such settings, it is easier to feel that there is no division, no conflict, no observer separate from the observed. But the moment real life intrudes, someone insults you, pressures you, contradicts you, the illusion breaks. Reaction returns instantly, and with it the familiar sense of me being affected. If an insight cannot withstand ordinary human interaction, then it is not a deep truth but a fragile state dependent on circumstance. There is also a more subtle cost. The emphasis on just observing without interference can lead to passivity or even a kind of dissociation. Instead of engaging with emotions, understanding their causes, or taking steps to regulate them, one may simply watch them endlessly, believing that observation itself is sufficient. This can stall any real psychological development. The person becomes a spectator of their own turmoil rather than someone capable of responding to it intelligently. At its core, the idea suffers from a fatal abstraction. It operates entirely within the realm of thought, while claiming to end the problems created by thought. It offers no clear way to bridge the gap between intellectual understanding and lived transformation. And without that bridge, it remains inaccessible to most people, not because they are incapable, but because the teaching itself provides no workable entry point. Calling it garbage may sound harsh, but the label fits in a specific sense. It is not necessarily false in some ultimate or philosophical dimension. The problem is that it is unusable. An insight that cannot be applied, tested, or embodied in the midst of real psychological disturbance becomes indistinguishable from empty speculation. It may impress, it may intrigue, it may even inspire brief moments of clarity, but it does not hold when it matters. In the end, any serious psychological idea must answer a simple question. Does it change how a human being actually experiences distress? If it does not, then regardless of how profound it sounds, it remains trapped in the very domain it claims to transcend. And in that sense, the observer is the observed is not a breakthrough. It is just another thought, circling endlessly within the limits of thought, calling itself freedom.